That's a hakafah, yes. Great. Please be seated. Okay, people, listen up now. We Israelites, living around 1000 BCE, about 3019 years from the year 2019 CE, just as a reference point, are about to enter the promised land of Israel. We are just about to conclude 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, during which we have established a code of law and list of rules inspired and even given by God, which we are all to follow to ensure a healthy and thriving society. So let me just share a few commandments with you. You'll all be able to find these commandments later on in published versions of the Torah, 74 of them by chance, in something we'll call a Torah portion named Ki Teitzei in the near future. So here are just a few of these commandments. If two men get into a fight with each other, and the wife of one comes up to save her husband from the other, and she puts out her hand and touches the other man in a place she should not touch, you shall cut off her hand. Show no pity. Okay, got that? All right, what else? Oh yes, when there is a dispute between people and they go to a court and a decision is rendered declaring that one is right and the other is wrong, the one that is wrong is to be punished by beating. The judge will have him lie down and beaten up to 40 lashes, but no more than 40. Another, if a household has a wayward and defiant son, not like you, Asher, just some other son, who does not heed his mother or father and does not obey them, even after they discipline him, his parents shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his town, and the people of the town shall stone him to death. Okay. You shall not subvert the rights of the stranger or the orphan. Remember, you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and that God redeemed you from there. When you reap the harvest in your field, and when harvesting overlook a sheaf of grain, do not turn back to get it. It shall go to the stranger, or the orphan and the widow. When you remove the fruit of your olive trees, do not go over them again. The excess olives shall go to the stranger and the orphan and the widow. Always remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore, you are charged to follow this commandment. So here we sit in Central Synagogue in the heart of Manhattan, and our live streamers are sitting in locations throughout the world, at least 3,000 years after the laws from this week's portion were described to our ancestors. 3,000 years. Think how different life must have been then. So it's understandable, at least to me, that some of these commandments, such as the first three that I opened with, don't make sense to us. Maybe were not even sensible to our ancestors, even though they were written down. There are many scholars and commentators who are able to explain why commandments like the first three I shared are in our Torah in the first place. And some even note that they were never actually implemented. Tomorrow at our Shabbat morning Mishkan service, Rabbi Auerbach will take time to specifically investigate the punishment surrounding the poorly behaved son. Yet despite the divide between life today and that of thousands of years ago, there are a number of commandments that have remained ones that Jewish communities have been devoted to fulfilling. This includes the commandment to care for, to respect, and to provide for the most vulnerable, the orphan, the bereft, the strangers in our midst. These mitzvot have stood the test of time. They have remained paramount and become foundational to who we have been, and who we continue to be as a people and as a religion. And as you heard, these commandments are not only meant to be intellectually understood, these commandments are to be experienced emotionally and personally. We're told to remember our status as the stranger, as the other, as the enslaved in the land of Egypt. We are to remember the most vulnerable are people just like us. In fact, they are us. And we don't have to look back all the way to Egypt. Just by a show of hands, how many of us know of stories from our own families of people who left their homes in Europe or the Middle East or elsewhere in the world to come to the United States with basically nothing? Just see how many of us for whom that story is true. And yet there is an aspect of our humanity that makes it difficult sometimes to see ourselves in the other. Even if we were just the other a few generations ago, we can forget. And so we are charged, we are commanded to push ourselves to remember and to connect and to dig deep, to open our hearts and be compassionate with those who are struggling. I bumped into a congregant this week who was leaving the pavilion, that's the room right underneath the sanctuary, after making hundreds of sandwiches for our guests who join us each Thursday and Friday for our breakfast program. And Andrea told me, the synagogue makes it easy for me to help our neighbors. I'm glad she felt this way, and I give her and our volunteers tremendous credit for taking the time and making the effort to be there for the other. And we know there are so many ways to do this. We can fund programs that serve the most needy. We can tutor recent immigrants. We can treat the other with dignity and respect with our words whenever we encounter them. I've taken up the practice of learning the names of the people in my neighborhood who are regularly asking for money, and it makes a difference when I can see Mills and say hello to him by name. Many of us are aware that Jews and Jewish organizations are at the forefront of trying to find humane solutions for the crisis at our southern border. The values that guide them are the exact same ones as those in this week's Torah portion. It is easy for too many of us to be consumed with our own lives and forget about the other. And I pray that we will continue to hear the call of our tradition to listen up and to embrace our long-standing commitment to act upon these 3,000-year-old commandments that remind each of us and every one of us to be there for the most vulnerable in our midst. May we make it so.